Yes, welcome. Good evening, everyone. It is my honor to be here with you all tonight. And on behalf of Next Philadelphia and Alfaro Media, welcome to what I know will be an extraordinary evening. My name is Raquel Arredondo. I'm your host for tonight and the founder of Thrive Strategy Partners, a consulting practice built on one belief, that belonging is not a program. It is a leadership practice. I spent 30 years inside institutions such as the University of Pennsylvania, Rutgers, Drexel, Penn State, as one of the few Latinas in the room, learning firsthand what it takes to build cultures that actually hold people. That experience is why Thrive exists, and it's why tonight matters to me personally. The people you're about to meet are doing the work in the city government, in civic associations, in boardrooms, classrooms across Philadelphia, of building the environments this city needs. And my job at Thrive is to help those institutions catch up to those leaders and these leaders that you're going to meet tonight. But tonight, my job is simply to make sure that their stories are heard. So let's begin by welcoming the man responsible for bringing us all together this evening, CEO and founder of Alfaro Media and Next in Philly, Martin Alfaro.
Thank you. Well, I was wondering if people would show up today. It looks like we need more chairs.
Do you have your camera on you? We probably should take a picture of this.
Yeah, this is amazing.
This is
Well,
wonderful.
I just want to start by saying thank you, first of all, to you for being the host tonight. I'm really, really excited about this event because it really means a lot to me. And it's all about people who believe in you and people who have been there for each other for many years. And I'm also grateful to all of you for the opportunity to get to know a little bit about your stories, to share that with us, and many more stories that are here tonight. And, I was very intentional about the guest list because, this is season 1. So just think about that.
Look out for season 2. And if I do a good job tonight, I'll be back. So let's go ahead and dive in. I have a couple of questions for you.
Do you want to give a little rundown of how we're doing this?
Sure. So I'm going to start us off with the foundation, with the why we're here, why you're doing this work, and then I'll bring up our panelists, our guests, and we're going to take a little deeper dive into their stories. If you've had the privilege, I'm sure many of you have had the privilege of seeing these interviews on Next in Philly. So hopefully through our questions, through this time together, you'll learn a little bit more and why this is so important for all of us to be around and support our communities here in Philadelphia.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll add is we want this to be an interactive conversation. So if you have questions, if you want to go deeper into one of the panelists and their stories, please raise your hand. There's microphones going around, so they will come over to you, give you a microphone, and ask a question. We want this to be a conversation between all of us.
Yeah. And, like I mentioned, I've been studying all of our wonderful guests, so I feel as if I know them all personally for my entire life. So, so this is also for you. So most definitely, if you have questions, please let us know. All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
All righty. So, Martin, Philadelphia has no shortage of talent, but Next in Philly is specifically about identifying the people who aren't just talented, but who are on the trajectory to lead. What made you see that gap, and why did you feel Philly needed someone to call that out explicitly?
So, I was bored one day, and I was like,
How all great plans start.
I was like, how can I add more work to my plate, No, but in all seriousness, so this is not by any means an original idea. There's a lot of different, podcasts and different series out there. But I noticed that for the most part, every time, I've seen some of these models around the city with different leaders, but they're always featuring the same people, and they're always featuring they're always featuring C-suite or CEOs, and I'm like, they don't need a platform because they already have access to everything. So I was like, how can I create something similar but with my own twist, where we can bring opportunities and a platform to folks like the 10 folks that we featured in the first season. So that's how the idea came about. And then I was like, because I'm like extra, I'm gonna have to do this in a studio and make it, invest, because all of this costs money. But I was like, I can do it. I'm gonna make it happen because I believe in this project and I think it has a lot of potential.
Absolutely, thank you. So my next question for you, leadership is a word that gets used loosely. When you're looking at someone for Next in Philly, what tells you this person isn't just doing good, but they are taking the lead? What's the signal you're looking for that others might be missing?
So what I heard on the streets is that you have to be my friend. I said Martin only features his friends.
Did you really hear that?
Yes, yeah.
Was that a criticism, or someone
I
jealous
think
that they weren't selected?
That's a good point. For the record, I didn't say that, okay? But you know what? I took that criticism and I said, why not? I see in other communities people featuring their friends, giving contracts to their friends. So why can't we do the same?
I agree completely.
Yeah. So I think honestly, when you read the stories that we feature so far, everyone has such a unique story. So we're not looking for like a specific theme. And when you look at the city and the diversity that exists here, right? We can say that. I know in this room we can say diversity. That's not a bad word. But I think that everyone has a unique story, and we should be able to have platforms where we can share that. And most of the people that we featured have come through, different people who follow our account. So it's been great, and I'm not the only person that can attest to that. People on the team who have Maria, you have access to the Instagram. You see all the DMs that we get. So that's where we're getting, there's a huge pipeline out there. So I hope that we can continue to do this because obviously there's a need, and I'm happy to see that, people are curious about it.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree with you more. In my time working in higher education, I was always looking for those individuals that I felt, I could see that talent, and giving them that opportunity to have the spotlight, to go out there, to do something outside of their, job title, so that they had the visibility and the exposure. And I would frequently say, so many of the successful people in this country came from dad was on the golf course with someone else, and next thing you know, the person that doesn't have, all the qualifications is now leading IBM or, some other big organization. So, in my capacity, why am I not using my role, my voice, my seat at the table to do the same? And that's exactly what you've been doing. And we need more people to do that, to recognize, I may not have the biggest microphone, but I have people that are paying attention. So the 5 people that we'll be speaking with tonight have been identified as next leaders in the city. What is your challenge or charge to Philadelphia, to the institutions, the gatekeepers, the people with resources about what they should be doing with that information?
I think that, going back to my last response, I think that, it's our responsibility to help each other out. Let's not be crabs in a bucket, let's help each other get out of that bucket and, go back and get, another person out, because like there's, when we look at the city, when we look at the leadership, and I'm not just talking about like government, talking about the real power, which is corporations. When we look at those boardrooms, they don't reflect the people. When we look at like 90% of the CEOs in the city, they do not reflect
The city.
Mm-hmm. So I think that, my call to action to all of you is like help one another. Let's support each other, nominate them to be next in Philly for seasons to come. And, it's all about that. There's a lot of power in this room, and it's really up to us to help each other.
Exactly. Exactly. So before I let you go, anything else you want to share with us, or are there any questions from the audience?
Yeah, maybe some questions from the audience.
Any question you've been dying to ask, Martin?
No, don't say that.
How the house renovation projects are going?
Maybe Kyle has some thoughts. Kyle might have some thoughts about that.
As he
Fades away.
fades away into the landscape. All
All
right.
right. Well, I
Well,
guess now we.
Yeah,
the guest.
let's invite up our guest, Martin. Thank you very much. So come on up and grab your seat.
Oh, there.
No assigned seats, wherever you'd like, wherever you're comfortable. Oh, I see how we're doing here. You got power. You got power. So tonight is not a panel. Tonight is Philadelphia at its best. In this room, we have a man who grew up moving from house to house in South Philly because his family was told this city wasn't built for them, who came out the other side with a doctorate, a career-shaping federal policy, and a brand new baby daughter that he is now raising in the same city, determined to change the rules that tried to stop his family. We have a veteran who was told in different rooms at different points in her career, don't speak Spanish, don't mention the Army, don't bring up who you love, and her answer to all of that, no. We have a young man from West Philadelphia who found his calling at 14 years old, interning at the mayor's office, who believes, as Plato did, that once you've seen the light, you have a responsibility to go back in, and bring others out. We have a Latina public servant, the daughter of Mexican immigrants, who now runs the election infrastructure for the entire city of Philadelphia. And he shows up every single day to hold a door open that was never meant to open for someone like her. And we have a chamber leader who, at a moment when organizations across this country are retreating from their commitments to the most marginalized, is doubling down because he knows that an inclusive economy is not a courtesy, it is a foundation. Each of them has a story this city needs to hear, so let's get into it. So my first question goes to Vanessa Caracosa, the Deputy Executive Director of the Office of the City Commissioners and President of Alpha Philadelphia. Vanessa, you started as a grassroots organizer on the ground in Texas, the daughter of Mexican immigrants, working to get people to the polls. And now you are the person who literally runs the election infrastructure for the entire city of Philadelphia. What does it mean to you that that little girl from that background is now the one holding the door open?
Yeah, so first of all, can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Martin and Raquel. Thank you for being our wonderful host tonight. For me, I came to my public service by accident. I was a pre-med student and I was not happy. I didn't know what I was going to figure out after that. But I actually I discovered my passion by registering people to vote in Texas. And it was in a predominantly Latino community where I heard the same stories. Yes, it was bread and butter issues, but it was also people feeling like their voice was not heard or they didn't really understand the process. So it was really, really special to me to be able to walk each person through the process in Spanish, knocking on doors, being on the ground. And I didn't really know where that would take me, but I discovered a passion through that. So again, came to it by accident, but it's been really rewarding that 10 years later, now 11 years later, I get to work for the city and in an office that's nonpartisan, that administers elections and voter registration for the city. and that really focuses on access. Because regardless of who you vote for, what issues you care about, you should have a seat at the table, you should have a voice, and you should exercise that civic responsibility.
Thank you. Before we keep moving, any questions for Vanessa?
Hi, I'm also from Texas and Mexican. What's up?
Bringing people together. Mark,
So, hey, so here's the thing. This leads to my question. So, I was raised by parents that did not teach me Spanish, and I have been struggling as an adult to sort of figure out where I belong in this entire process, because I feel like if there is a job or an opportunity that is about like Latino voter outreach, for example, or working in an office focusing on Latino issues, et cetera, those doors are often open to me to interview and then closed once they find out I can't speak Spanish. And it is really tough because my story's not it's not by itself. Many kids, especially my age, were raised for whatever reason not speaking Spanish, the no sabo kids, if you will, right? And that means nothing in terms of what I want to do and how I want to advance Latino people in this country and visibility. But there's often that sort of door that I keep trying to get through that keeps getting closed because of that, by many different people. So I would just ask, like, what would you say is the best thing for me to do in terms of moving forward, or anybody who's looking to advance their career who keeps having this door closed just because of something that was out of my control that I didn't learn?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so I grew up in Bucks County, and when I first moved to Texas, that was something new that I learned. I was like, oh wow, like there's like, I mean, I knew about it, but getting to see like first generation, second, third, and so on in Texas, and just really getting to see, the Mexican community there. A lot of them, like you said, wouldn't speak Spanish, but it wasn't by choice, right? It was looked down upon, back in our parents' days in that particular area and in other areas. So I would just say continue telling the story of the Latino community, because I've been in so many rooms too, where anytime we have a conversation around engaging the Latino community, it's always just in Spanish. And that's also a problem, right? We have, in my role as Alpha Philadelphia president, we have a lot of Latinos who are doing big things in corporate, right? And we also need to reach those voters. We also need to reach that community. And we're diverse, and we have many issues that we care about. So maybe taking that as an opportunity to talk about how diverse the Latino community is, and also that we're all around the city. We don't just live in District 7. And I know your work with Councilwoman Lozada, and yes,
Me?
yes, you see. So, I think that community is predominantly Latino, but like I live in Fishtown, you lived in South Philly, and I'm sure many of you live in other areas, Northeast, etc., right? So just continuing telling that story when that door does get shut.
Thank you.
and I think too, the message, and for the Latinos in the room, we're not a monolith. We I think from the outside, it's, you're from Puerto Rico, Cuba, Mexico, wherever, and so you are just like everyone else. And that very similarly, and I'm probably twice your age, my parents came here from Cuba and Puerto Rico, and it was, when I got into kindergarten, we don't speak Spanish. We are Americans. And it was forbidden in my house. And so while I understand it very well, and I can get myself through a restaurant or traveling, or but it's still something. It's even within the culture. We feel marginalized. Amongst our own people, and it's just something that I think that we need to continue to educate. Those of us, those around us, that there are many different stories. It's not a monolith. Yeah. All right. Any other questions for Vanessa before we move on? All righty, Zoraida, are you ready? All right. So Zoraida Cordero is the Executive Director of the Sustainable Business Network of Greater Philadelphia and a U.S. Army veteran. First and foremost, thank you. Thank you for your service. So Zoraida, you've been told in different rooms at different points in your career to leave parts of yourself at the door. Don't mention the Army. Don't speak Spanish. Don't bring up your sexuality. And your answer to all of that was essentially no. What has it cost you to be whole, and what has it made possible?
This on? Can y'all hear me? Yes. I thought long and hard about that response. The reason why was when I thought about what it cost me to be whole. As Latinos or as people of vulnerable communities, sometimes we have different ages and phases of our life. So maybe what it would have cost me at a younger version of myself, as an adult at this very moment, of empowered women seeing other powerful people in the room. I feel that those no's or what I let go is nothing, because what I've learned now is the rooms that I've been a part of that did not embrace all of me didn't need me in that room, and I don't need to be there, but I need to make sure that I create inclusive spaces for other people who feel like me to be able to be welcome. The same token with that, if I wasn't invited or I wasn't appreciated with that, maybe these people were people I did not need to affiliate myself with. And what I learned with that is the more, we were speaking about this earlier, the more I shut pieces of myself off and completely disregard from my part of my identity, the harder it's going to be for me to be my true authentic self. And what I learned from that, or what has allowed me to feel empowered, is when I step into these rooms as a leader, I'm not just representing myself and my identity as a queer person, as a veteran, as a woman, as a Latina. There is somebody else that I'm advocating for who is looking inside and thinking, well, if she hides parts of herself and she's not proud of her heritage and where she comes from, what does that mean for me? And what does that mean about these rooms? And there's something about legacy that is very important to me. We are in a room where we're allowed to feel free and welcome, because Martin, you've set up this welcoming space, but also we've advocated so hard to be able to speak our truth, identify as our whole selves, something that our ancestors did not have the access to do. So we need to live that legacy by showing up as our whole self and being intentional with that integrity of who we are, who we represent. But in the same vein as, sure, you can show up as your whole self and be authentic to you. Everyone does not deserve access to all of you. And you could still show up as your whole self, but not give them every part of that whole you. And I think it's discernment of what room, who you're speaking to, and what you're representing of, maybe I show up as a veteran today. Maybe I'm a social worker. But that doesn't mean that I'm not all of that in every room that I'm a part of, because I'm not bringing myself, I'm bringing other people that identify with pieces of me. And I'm very proud of my heritage and my upbringing.
Yeah, we did discuss earlier just how empowering that is. And you know, it's not easy. It's not easy to fully embrace the parts of you that you know society or, you know, your colleagues or your neighbors or whatever it might be. It's not easy to embrace that and to know that this could be hurting my career, it could be hurting my opportunities. But when you get to that point in which you own that, this is who I am, and I'm not doing it any differently, how powerful is that? And just as you said, the representation, you don't know the eyes that are watching you. And again, you know, in my time in working in higher education, I'll never forget, I had a student come to my office I was in the College of Business at Drexel. A student from another one of the schools, you know, I heard that you were the Latina fairy godmother. And
Technically.
I was like, okay, where are we going with this? And, you know, we talked and she was sharing with me, you know, some of her career struggles and, you know, with her family because of identity as a Latina woman, you have to stay close to home and all that stuff. And she left my office and I realized, you know, me trying to assimilate into this culture and not bringing my full self is not doing any service to these young people that I don't even realize are watching me. I'm so like caught up with trying to keep myself safe that I didn't realize there are people watching me. And so what you're doing, what you're sharing with us all tonight is something very empowering and something, I hope that everyone kind of walks out of here acknowledging that, what part of me am I hiding or not fully embracing that could be enriching the lives of people that I'm around or opening up new doors that I didn't even realize existed because I've been hiding those aspects of myself. So thank you for sharing that. I think very empowering, very. And so I want to give you all an opportunity. Anybody have any questions for Zoraida?
Hi, Chris here from Taino Studios, also your best friend, in case anyone else had the idea. I wanted to ask you a question about showing up in these spaces in Philadelphia because you do it so well. What would you tell to someone who's new to the space, but is also maybe not as confident in themselves and still finding themselves in how they would navigate the spaces?
It's a beautifully loaded question.
You're in trouble.
Maybe. I'm going to break it into pieces. As a transplant, because I'm from New York myself, and I also lived in Allentown, I am an expert of my experience, where I come from, and my identity. But I'm not an expert in Philadelphia. And I need to give people that power to say, hey, in order to feel welcome, tell me about you. What are your needs? Or how can I show up? How can I build community with you? And I feel that allowed me to learn to love Philadelphia through the local Philadelphians and the scene of nonprofit organizations, local leaders, and understanding what's the beautiful parts of Philly and where Philly needs support. And that's how I stepped in as a social worker. And I lead with that because the second piece is, what are you doing? What is your skill set? What is your passion? And figuring out where within what you know about you and your passion you fit in Philadelphia. There's many jobs. And I know gatekeeping is common and keeping things to the chest. But when you start opening up and sharing what you're passionate about, people are listening and people will put you on. So leading with integrity, inclusion, and not taking up space is super important. Understanding what you're really good at and what you care about. And being authentic. It goes back to my responses. Be your whole self. It could be extremely hard to turn off the noise and to shut off the voices and the advice that you're hearing. Maybe you don't want to share that you're unsure of this career path or that you don't really know what you're doing. No, actually share that. If you're confused, maybe this person might be able to guide you and bring you into the next person that's going to be your mentor. Or maybe you're looking for a friend, and something that I've learned, closed mouths don't get fed, right? So if you want a friend, put yourself out there. What do you like? What are you into? In my experience as a New Yorker, and I hope, except for you, Chris, don't judge me. I feel Philadelphia is more welcoming and kind to all of us and diverse spaces. So I feel that if you are in Philly and you're new, just open up. People are here. It's a very welcoming community. And yes, people can talk about the negatives all day long, but I have more positive stories to share about Philadelphia and how it welcomed me into the community and allowed me to find myself as a leader, as a social worker, as someone who cares about representing community members and knowing the power to share that space to empower other people. So I think it's not easy, but I do believe it gets easier the more you share and the more you find your community and your tribe of people.
That's lovely. Thank you. Any additional questions? All right. Ready, Rashawn?
Hello.
All right, Rashawn, you've referenced, which I loved, Plato's allegory of the cave as a personal motivation. I absolutely love that. The idea that once you've seen the light, you have a responsibility to go back into that cave and bring others out. You found that light at 14 years old, interning in the mayor's office, my good friend Nutter, through Cristo Rey. And what does it look like in practice to go back into the cave, to reach young Philadelphians who have every reason not to believe that government has anything to do with their lives?
Yeah, that's a very hard question to answer. And I'll first off.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Putting my Barbara Walters hat on.
Throw me the hard question. Sure, but no, outside of all of those things that you mentioned, I'm also the president of Young Evolve Philadelphia. I see one of my board members, Gary Wooten, in the back. Hello, Gary. Thank you for coming tonight.
Gary!
We've been around for 25 years focusing on civic advocacy and civic education in the city of Philadelphia. We have about 7,000 members up and across Philadelphia. So, when I say what I say is really what I mean. When it's very hard, right? I have canvassed for state rep. I have canvassed for city council folks. I have canvassed for people running for Congress. And, I've even, as a committee person, for when I lived in the city of Philadelphia myself, there's so many people who don't believe in government, and they have all the truly they have all the right reasons too. Again, like I grew up in two different areas in the city of Philadelphia. I grew up in West Philadelphia for about 10 years of my life, and then I moved to North Philadelphia in the zip code of 19133, which is when I was living there. It was the lowest socioeconomic zip code in the city of Philadelphia. We think about educational attainment, when you think about income, when you think about all the different things. So when folks don't really care about government, right? It's very hard not to understand it, right? Like look at my trash doesn't get picked up. The trash get picked up in certain parts of South Philly. The trash get picked up in certain parts of Society Hill, right? But in North Philadelphia, when the snow doesn't get plowed, right? When the lights go out, right? All these different things that these folks have to deal with on a day-to-day, when they can't get a job, when they have to catch 3 buses just to go and make $13.50 an hour, right? My government doesn't work for me. It does, right? But we have to really understand that government is slow, and it's very hard to make change. We want to see change every day. Trust me, I know. I work in Zach. I mean, am I lying? Come on, I see it every day, right? We do programs. Government is overcapacitated. At the end of the day, they have a duty for the city of Philadelphia to make this the most attractive city that we have in the country. We're celebrating our 250th, our semi-quincentennial this year. The birthplace of independence was about some 10 minutes down the street. Right? So we have to continue to put our pressure on government and say, hey, you get your voters, but on average in general elections, about 28% that comes out to vote in the election, that chooses your mayor, that chooses your congressperson, that chooses your senator. So how do we increase that? We increase that by showing that people that, listen, we care about government. Look what's happening in New York, right? Mayor Mamdani, he came into a situation with a $12 billion deficit and flipped it around in 140 days. Why? Because he cared. Why? Because he really leaned on his government staff to say, look, we owe a duty to New York, not any other place around the country, to New York, the same way how we have to do in Philadelphia. They have to hear us, and we are not going to stop rattling that cage until they do.
Powerful. What do you find is the biggest challenge when you're working with young people and trying to change their mind around this? I mean, there's so much discouragement.
Yeah.
There's so many things that are visible that it's difficult to say, no, in theory, or, I want to motivate you. How do you get that mind shift, mindset to shift?
That's a great question. And, people usually start at square one. I feel like in this space, you start at -3 square, right? Because civics isn't taught in schools, right? So
Imagine
even about,
that. What's that all about?
Yeah, who knows, right? The thing we fought for, right, in this country. But still, teaching folks how to vote, right? Understand the difference between who your judges are, right? All the things that folks say that's boring and doesn't matter, right? It does. So when you have to sit down, sometimes I was having a conversation on my way down here, funny enough, about PPA, right? And they're like, wait, why doesn't PPA give money to the school district? Well, it does, but there's these different little thresholds that they have to hit in order to give money to the schools. Well, how's that work? Well, that the city didn't really vote on that. The state voted on that. Well, how'd that happen? It's well, that happened because this, and they're no wonder why you're always stressed. It's very hard to explain, right? But when you finally get the group of young people that want to give a chance and listen, and sometimes it takes a long time. I'm not assuming that every conversation I have with young people, whether it's a one-off or maybe a follow-up, that's going to get it done. It takes multiple bites of the apple to folks to say, you know what, maybe I will, try. Maybe I will, answer that, that brochure you get in the mail. Maybe I will go down to city council and talk to some of my my city legislators. Maybe I will get on a bus in Harrisburg, and go up there and fight for something I believe in. But it takes time, and I think that's sometimes what all of us have, right? We all have the same amount of hours in the day. How you spend it truly matters, and I spend it trying to educate people and caring about your community.
I love that. We need more of that. I mean, I can see that with young people today that, especially, in the times that we're living in currently, that, I don't understand. How did this person get, appointed the director of this or the leader of that without any background and it can be very discouraging. So I applaud the work that you're doing, and I know that it's really tough. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Rashawn?
Hi, James.
So we heard a little bit about your background coming in. I'm just curious, how did you yourself keep yourself motivated? Starting at 14, and on the right path. I'd love to hear more about that.
Sure. That's a really great question. I think everything that I have, right? And sometimes, if you go to my LinkedIn, you go to my Instagram, you see a bunch of highlights, right? Like that's kind of what I post, but there's so many things that go into, what I do in the course of the day. And Gary can vouch for me. I hear that, you don't see the failures, right? And, when I grew up for a certain period of time in my life, I was disabled, had to relearn how to walk a couple times in my life. I was homeless, trying to figure out all these things. And I knew even at a young age that these systems weren't built for me. Right. And I think I might even said it in my interview with Martin, is that listen, man, I am hell bent on kicking down doors that so many people get that don't look like me, right? And I am just as good, and you are just as good as anybody who gets those executive director, SVP, AVP, whatever the hell, right? Jobs that you see that make all the money, but they don't get it because you're not that person for them. And that makes no sense. We go to college, right? Sometimes we go get 2 degrees. Look, Pablo got 3 degrees.
Pablo's got all the degrees.
All the degrees. Higher than anybody, right? But listen, but at the end of the day, right, we try so hard. And again, my stepfather is a Trinidadian American, right? So he understands. He came on a boxing scholarship at 16 trying to feed his family in the United States of America. We try as folks, who aren't from this country normally so hard to be better. And we're stuck with a little bit of stigmatizations or whatever. And again, those are things that keep me up at night, right? And to this day, I feel at 28, I've covered a lot of ground doing that, but I have so much more to give and do. So I'm happy to do it.
Did you say at 20?
28.
Oh.
28.
What?
I'm legally allowed to drink, ladies and gentlemen. Pardon me, please.
That is amazing. And I think that, again, for a lot of individuals that are not in, the majority or, come from marginalized identities or backgrounds, it's this pervasive thought in your mind from when you're young that I need to fit in, and not recognizing that what makes you unique and what makes you different, that is your magic talent. That is, the secret sauce. And so, where was I going with that? Being able to identify that and share with individuals, the uniqueness of our stories, that's what helps propel the next generation to say, wait a minute, I too was homeless for a time frame. I had, to go through this or the other, and wow, look at Rashawn now. Look at where he is. And again, it's about sharing these stories so that we are creating the representation and creating those pathways, whether they're perceived or actual pathways. That's our responsibility. Thank you. Any more questions? Oh,
So,
yes.
First, you had me stunned at when you said you were 28. That's crazy. But I did want to ask, and this would be a 2-part question because again, I had this question marinating in my mind since Vanessa was speaking. But in regards to voting, how would you say you get over those hurdles in thinking that it's important to vote? For example, I'm from Philadelphia. The only thing that kind of kept me out of trouble was boxing in the Rock Ministries in Kensington and Somerset. So when you're 18, 19 years old, the importance of wanting to get into voting, and especially, for example, I'm Colombian. My mother came here from Colombia. her main focus was putting food on the table. Voting is not important. If you would have spoken to her about it, she would have like kind of brushed it off. So for those people that come from other countries, and this is the part where it was marinating for Vanessa, on people that come from other countries have the opportunity to vote, but don't believe it's important or they have other priorities at that time to even think about that. And if you're a young man in Philadelphia, how do you guys get over those hurdles to find it important to vote or get the knowledge as to read upon who you're voting for?
So first you talk to Vanessa.
I said it's a two-part question.
I mean, you know, our city commissioner, who is like the whiz on voting, Omar Sabir, just walked in. So if I can't answer this question perfectly, hopefully he can, right? But I think, you know, it's a slow burn. Like, you know what I mean? And again, like you don't know me personally, but the same person you see at 28 wearing this suit, sitting on the stage, is the same person who's flying around this country at 14, 15, 16, wearing a suit that was, you know, a little bit, you know, looser, right, at the time, you know, doing the same exact thing, you know. And I feel like when it comes to voting, right, folks have to understand that what I tell people who are younger than me and some of my friends in group chats that I'm in now who are my age that aren't as like civically involved as like we are in this room is that, listen, you're not gonna find a perfect candidate, right? And the thing is, like, nobody's perfect, right? Like, granted, there's people who are better than others in this world, obviously, but at the end of the day, everybody's a human, right? So granted, you may like this person for one thing and may dislike this person for another thing, but at the end of the day, it's like, all right, what do I need as a voter, right? That answers one of it. The second part of it for people who are disengaged and who may say, well, look, I have to work at this bodega all day. Like, I don't have time to get out and vote. Or how does this person help me put money into my family's pockets? It's an invisible thing. Even my field in policy, right? I was talking to somebody in a councilman's office the other day, which I was given a talk to. And I was explaining to these young people that the realm that I get in and others, it's almost like a secondary circle, right? Folks don't wake up every day and say, I'm going to get into policy. Right, you do it as a retired lawyer. Maybe you know you were in education, and maybe it's. But I wanted to get into it at this age because I see the value and how important it is. So with that, right, I'm like, all right, here's all the ground that I have to cover with these young people who don't get taught this in schools, who don't understand, like, you know, what a budget appropriation is, who don't understand, like, the importance of canvassing in the city of Philadelphia. And you have to break all that stuff down step by step and be willing to get the know. And be like, you know what, maybe I'll talk to you tomorrow, right? Maybe, you know, I'll send you this stuff, and if you read it, fine. If you don't, read a little bit of it, ask me a question. But you gotta be able to be vulnerable in those situations. Because at the end of the day, if they don't know, a lot of times they're gonna just ask a simple question. And maybe that's all you need for the day, right? But you really have to be, listen, sometimes it's like there was a famous movie, it's like, explain it to me like a 4-year-old, right? We all had to learn something. Sometimes, like, we didn't all like start driving at 9 and 10. No, some of us failed our driving tests, right? And it takes time to really learn these things. These are complex situations that we have in the city of Philadelphia, especially thinking about uniformity, especially thinking about our tax structure compared to other counties 15 minutes up the road, right? See Zach's putting the finger down, like, I can't do that, but still, but again, like, these are all the things that are very complex. And some would go on a podium to say, not me, maybe, it's just saying that they are not taught by design. So how do we circumvent that and fix that for our next generation of leaders? I would love to hear your opinion.
Oh, you just been issued a challenge.
So, did you know my boss was gonna walk in when you asked me? Because I literally went first, and I was thinking, man, the chairman missed my part. So thank you so much for being here, chairman. So what I start with, and again, right now, like I mentioned earlier, I'm in a nonpartisan role. So what really matters is access. So one of our initiatives at the city commissioners was to open 10 satellite election offices, one in every council district, to ensure that we were able to have access in every community. And what does that mean? Well, it means that if you do have your family member working at the bodega from like morning to night, that they're able to vote by mail in one of these 10 sites. And they have we usually have them open for about 30 days before every election, 7 days a week. So access is one of them. And then when going back to how you were sharing with your mom, when I was knocking on doors years ago, and even when I talk to people now, I always start with, what do you care about? What issues do you care about, right? Because we don't want to assume that, you know, they're not voting because X, Y, and Z, right? And usually when I'm having conversations with people that are not engaged in the system, you know, I'm usually able to tie whatever they care about to maybe a ballot question that's on the ballot, or the contrast between the candidates, right? This is without my city commissioner's hat on. This is more with, you know, my trusted messenger, my friends, my family, and really just giving people the resources and the language that they need so that they understand the process. And a lot of the time when you explain to someone, at least, you know, just thinking back in when I was organizing with the Latino community, and especially the folks that, you know, weren't registered but maybe got registered, once they did it that first time, then they got comfortable with doing it again, and then reaching out to that resource just every election and just staying aware.
Thank you. And yes, I thank you, Rashawn. Thank you, Vanessa. I want to formally welcome you, Commissioner Sevier, to our panel today. Thank you so much. All right, next question goes to Pablo. Ready? Our PhD in Urban Affairs and Public Policy from University of Delaware, former policy advisor for the U.S. Department of Treasury, and congressional candidate for PA's 3rd District. But I think the most important role, father. Relatively new dad.
Yes,
How old is she?
3 months.
3 months. Give it up for dad.
Just turned 3 months.
Well, you know, when we did the interview, I think she
It was
born
3
back-
days.
Yeah, 3 days.
Yeah.
I'm glad you didn't cancel.
3 seems to be, you know, an auspicious number for you.
That's right. I have 3 brothers.
There you go.
Yeah.
I could get religious about it. Save that for the after show. All right. So my question for you, Pablo. You grew up in a family that was locked out of housing, profiled by police, and told in 100 different ways that this city wasn't built for you. You came out on the other side with a PhD, a career shaping federal policy, and a belief that an educated community cannot be coerced. Now you're a new father with a baby girl. What does all of that mean? The childhood, the work, the belief, when you look at her and think about the Philadelphia that she's going to grow up in. Dun, dun, dun.
That's a heavy
It's
question.
heavy, yeah.
Because all of those are things that I believed in deeply, profoundly before I even knew I was going to have a child. Now I have a sense of urgency. And I have a sense that we need radical change. Because, as I said when I was on the campaign trail, things haven't gotten better in the city that I grew up in. They've gotten worse. And so if we don't address those issues, then my daughter is going to grow up in a harder situation, harder circumstances than the ones that I grew up. And that's unacceptable. Not in 2026, not in the 21st century, and not in my city. So just blank. That's it.
Right.
Period. Full stop.
Right. Talk to us a little bit about some of the initiatives that you are focused on, and you know what is your top priority right now specifically?
So right now I've taken a step back just to be present at home because my wife unfortunately only got 6 weeks of maternity leave. And it coincided with me being able to have flexibility. I withdrew from the race. I believe in a lot of the movement and the issues that I was focusing on as a candidate, but I also believed that there was another candidate in the race who would be able to champion those issues as well as me. And that allowed me to feel comfortable focusing on raising my daughter and being home. Because when you look at a baby, and this sounds kind of ridiculous that I wouldn't have thought of this before, but she couldn't hold her head up, you know, and at 6 weeks, this is like the smallest little, most beautiful being you can imagine. I couldn't think of putting that in daycare. So that's what I'm most focused on right now. But all of the issues that I believed in when I was working at the U.S. Treasury Department and prior at the Biden Institute I've always focused on economic development and opportunity. And what I've noticed, and one of the reasons that I decided to get into the race was because, as I mentioned earlier, this is a city where things have gotten worse, not better, in my lifetime. And that means there is no opportunity. And so to go back to some of the questions that have been asked in terms of, why should I care? Why the government doesn't feel, it's true. I don't think the government is working for people in the city at this moment. Not most people. It's working for some. But this city has higher levels of inequality, economic inequality, than it did when I was growing up. It has more segregation, more economic segregation. And so these are issues that need to be addressed. And you can't address them fully unless you have an educated population. I mean, it's by design that the people are kept busy so that they don't have time to focus on the issues that affect them. So they don't have time to really think about, well, how can I improve the social outcomes? How can I improve my well-being? How can I become prosperous to actually fulfill the dream that I was promised and the contract that this city declared was going to be delivered to us in 1776?
And you're absolutely right. We're at a point in our society, where people are struggling to survive, and anything outside of the day-to-day just seems like a luxury to be able to spend time volunteering or speaking out against things that you feel need to be changed, or so on and so forth. And so, yeah, there's an opportunity there, and a need for more education, for more involvement, for more opportunities for involvement. And how do you get to those communities and those pockets and those young people? And that's the big question, and that's a lot of the work that you all are doing.
To go into it in terms of the Latino lens, just a little bit, and if you think about your parents or your grandparents, ask them, what were the conditions that led for you to leave your country and come here? And once they can, have that conversation, it could be an easy one, or more than likely it's going to be a difficult one. And you'll learn that there were conditions at home that forced them out, but they didn't want to leave home. I grew up in Philly, but I'm Puerto Riqueño de pura cepa, and it was a very difficult decision for my parents to leave Puerto Rico. They actually moved back because they were in a position where finally they could. But we have so much pride for the countries that we represent, and the country, and that defines us, really. So that's a reason to then say to the young people, okay, now you've had that conversation, but you live here. Are you proud to be a Philadelphian? That's why you go out and vote. That's why you want to impact the change that is affecting your lives and the lives of your families.
Similarly, my father's considered a political refugee from Cuba. He left, in 62. And growing up, all I ever heard, I had friends saying to me, your father is more American than most Americans. Like the pride that he had being an American, the opportunity to vote. And, he wouldn't shy down from telling anyone, it's your obligation, it's your civic duty, you need to get involved. And, now I have two sons, young adults, 26 and 24, something like that. That have grown in a very different community, a very different lifestyle. But it's always been, you talked about legacy a little earlier. It's always been so important for me to remind my boys, Aboy left his country, he left his family, he left everything that he knows, and now he goes back. And none of it's not familiar to him at all. He doesn't belong there. You're his legacy. It is up to you to finish school, to get a career, to vote, to do all of these things. Sometimes they get it right, sometimes they fail out of college. But that's the after show. What was that?
But you can still do that.
Yeah.
And still find another path.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, it's again, it's generational. It's the importance of telling those stories, of making sure that, you know, you can be proud of where you come from. My 24-year-old, he bought a belt, or I guess my father brought him a belt from Cuba that says Cuba. And he goes to work wearing that every day. And it's like, he looks silly, but he is so proud of that belt. And, you know, I'm just like, bring it, do you? And, you know, it's a talking point. People ask him and he can share, you know, and, you know, that is our job at every point in our lives, is to make sure that we are sharing with the next generation the why, you know, the importance, how fortunate, even as screwy as things might be in our country right now, you know, this is still one of the greatest countries, and we have so many opportunities that, you know, it may be discouraging, but embrace it, do something. You know, don't just sit there and complain, and you know, so on and so forth. So appreciate what it is that you're doing, and God bless your little, what is your daughter's name?
So my name is Pablo Ivan. Her name is Ivana Elena.
God bless Ivana Elena. Thank you. Any questions for Pablo? No? All right. Zach's like, all right.
I feel like the guy waving next to the Mount Rushmore of charisma here. Sorry in advance that things are about to get more muted.
No. So our final guest tonight, Zachary Wilka, CEO of the Independence Business Alliance, an attorney, an activist, a fundraiser, a recent inductee of the Philadelphia Business Journal's Power 100. All right, here's your big question. Here's your Barbara Walters moment. My Barbara Walters. So in your interview with Martine, you said something that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. And that's the arc of progress used to feel linear, and now it feels more like an EKG. You're leading Philadelphia's LGBTQ plus chamber at exactly this moment when other organizations are retreating from their commitments and your community is under attack legislatively and economically. So what does it take to double down when everything around you is pulling back?
It's easy, right?
If you say Prosecco.
That does not hurt, but it's unfortunately not the whole answer. Well, first of all, contextually, this is not new for any community, what is happening right now. I'm the wizened old grandfather on this panel here, so I'm old enough to remember that most of what I have lived through is the queer rights movement moving in forward directions with very few setbacks. The tail end of the civil rights movement, where that was very similarly positioned. And so what we are experiencing right now is actually, I think, what is normal and like baked into the American project. That setbacks have always been happening. And we had a really lucky run for several years, and now it's time to fight back for all of us in different ways, in whatever capacities we can have. Even when you look at the Supreme Court of the United States, like it's kind of a flop institution right now. To be perfectly honest, they had a good 40-year run between Brown versus Board of Education and gay marriage, but they've been setting us back for years and years and years. So we just have to sort of level set that this is not new. We've been saving ourselves forever, right? So that's one thing. And then I think three ways that I sort of think about the ways that I and our organization are fighting back. One is that we have no choice. I think we had a sneak preview during the pandemic, and then it was really confirmed after Trump's second election that for our community at least, and many of the communities that intersect with us, that no one is coming to save us but ourselves. We see so many politicians now that used to say our names, some of them work down the street, that only say our names when they're in front of us, and now sometimes forget about us altogether. We see a lot of companies that were putting pictures of us up everywhere, flying rainbows, that are no longer doing those kind of things. I think eventually we'll have a chance to hold those entities accountable. But for right now, we get to work with each other to make sure that we're all surviving and thriving at this moment. And even within our own community, there is a major attack on, it's almost like a Jim Crow for trans and gender nonconforming communities right now, where there are major under and unemployment crises that are being artificially manufactured to disappear that community. So it is up to us in our community and the communities that intersect with us to make sure that that is not going to happen. And we can do that by making strong economic choices. We can do that by being inclusive, and we can fight back against the cowardice when it comes to people who don't want to say the words diversity, equity, inclusion as if they're only policies and not the way we all actually just live our lives. So the second thing I would say is it's a joy to do. It's really fun to do this work. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a recovering attorney where things are miserable at all times, but the fact that I get to work with so many innovative, creative, awesome people who are doing either fantastic entrepreneurial journeys or doing amazing things in the workplace or helping create policy that's going to move us forward. It's just, it's great. It's a dream job. Like if, when you ask me what is my dream job, I say I do not dream of work, but if I had to, this is like up there with what I would want to be doing. So I'm just really excited to be doing that kind of stuff. It is also a joy to be a thorn in people's sides, just like personally for me. In many ways, this job has been my destiny to like make sure that we have a seat at the table because I'm pretty relentless about it. I have a lot of privileges that I could lean on, so I'm not kicked out right away. But then I make sure that if we're at the business roundtable and Zoraida is not there, she's there next time. She probably doesn't want to go to the meeting, but she deserves to be at that table. So I'm making sure that people are coming with me there. And I don't know if that's just like birth chart or what, but it's possible. I am a Sagittarius, in case you're wondering. And then the third thing that keeps me going is that I know unequivocally that we're right, that I'm right. So we're the good guys and we're going to win. And the way that we do that is believing and having faith in that the fact that things are going to turn out the right way, not having faith without the actions to make sure that it's going to turn out the right way. But I believe because we are right, we can convince enough people that things are going to be better in the future, policy-wise, economic-wise, emotionally. And if I don't believe that, then it would be really hard to get out of bed in the morning and do any work at all. But we do it anyway, because we are the good guys and we're going to win.
I love it. I love it. So I'm sitting here thinking, and you're like, I'm inspired, you're motivational. Like, how do you keep yourself getting up every morning and feeling like I'm going to do this? This is going to be awesome. You know, I can't wait because.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mix of like feeling like we have no choice and that like people in our community who have the privileges to lean on in employment and the ability to be in rooms where policy are being made. I think we're duty bound to make sure that we're looking out for other people. So that, and I also like doing what I do a great deal. I have really awful work-life balance, to be perfectly honest with you. But when I do engage in any sort of balance, like I try to travel a lot. I love not being in this country if I don't have to be sometimes. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that I'm catching planes and not feelings everywhere I go. That is one thing. I have 2 dogs that don't speak English back to me. It is great. I have a husband who does speak English back to me.
How great is that? Wait.
It's really good. And I'm also a big reading nerd. I sit and I read fiction a lot because I believe that that's like the best tool to like develop empathy for people who you are not.
You know, we're laughing about this, but you know, this is a very real thing. You know, when the work that you all are doing, it can really feel heavy. And it's important to identify, you know, those spaces and those places and those people that uplift you and remind you of why you're doing this work. That your daughter, for instance, you know, that motivation for, okay, today sucked.
Yeah.
Today sucked. But you know what? Tomorrow's a new day. We'll forget about that. We're going to keep going. And, you know, I'm going to make sure that my first call is to the biggest fan on my, you know, my fan book that's going to help me get through the day.
I think spite is a really good motivator for me.
Spite? I want to grab drinks with you. I have a feeling that I'm kind of that same way too.
Three marathons just powered by spite alone.
3 marathons?
Just a long time.
Oh.
Like just like spite is like such a good motivator and like proving haters wrong. And right now, like we're at like peak hater for a lot of our community.
Yeah, you are.
Who are like they've always kind of been there, but they feel more empowered to be vocal at
Well.
this moment. But that's a real motivator for me as well. I love that the work I do is upsetting people. I love getting fan mail from people who hate what we're doing. Like, it really like keeps me going.
Love it.
I love it.
I love that. And I think that's something that we need to hear in the room because it's not just, yay, I'm doing this and this is great. Sometimes it is the spite that is going to propel you forward and make sure that, you know what, if I'm going to do this, I'm making an impact. I'm leaving, a footprint. I'm going to make sure that you know that I was in this room before you kick me out of the room. And, that's also part of the work that we're doing. Any questions for Zach? You want to know his Instagram handle?
Lex knows where to find it.
Hi everyone, my name is Lex. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a person with queer and trans experience, so I'm really grateful to be in this space. I also work as a queer educator, consultant, and public speaker. So my question is for Zach and for everyone, where as a community organizer and advocate, my work is to help folks move past just allyship into being co-conspirators, into being accomplices in this work. And so I'd love to hear from y'all about what in each of y'all's realms, like what does that truly look like in action? Because we can say a lot of words, but if that action doesn't align, then we're not allowing folks the space to be uncomfortable and pushing into the actual change that's needed. Because as we all know, we gotta have that discomfort to get there. So I always love to ask folks about what does that co-conspiracy look like or feel like? And then also, that's a very real hard question for us. I also want to talk about joy, right? Like especially as a trans person in today's society, like trans joy is so beautiful and it's an act of resilience and being able to continue to keep going. So I'd love to also hear what brings y'all joy. Like what is something that you do, hopefully at least once a day, or if you can at least do it once a week, that keeps you going and fills that cup. Because hopefully y'all don't get burnt out in the incredible work that you are doing. We can keep you going. And so this is just a little reminder, like please take care of yourselves. And thank you for the work that you are doing.
So what does active allyship look like and what brings you joy?
Yeah, let me give you two co-conspirator things, a quick joy, and then we'll pass the mic around to my friends here. One is just for me, like inheriting a Chamber of Commerce that never had an executive before. I try to Trojan horse as much social justice into a capitalist framework as I possibly can. It's often difficult and you're sort of batting against a cage sometimes, but we started a program, the first program in the country around trans empowerment from a Chamber of Commerce right here in Philadelphia in our chamber by doing that and changing hearts and minds as we went along. Another is that we hold really inclusive networking events where we purposely invite allies that have made mistakes before to come and join us because we find that the way that people are most like move from tolerance to acceptance to embracing is actually meeting the people that they don't understand. So having a room full of folks of different racial and ethnic backgrounds, different places on the gender spectrum, different sexual orientations, where allies can come and actually meet these people and see them as more than just concepts is a way that we have found that we've like moved people from the allyship space to one where they're ready to like go to battle for us. So we're really excited about that. Joy for me, I will go home tonight and don't tell me what happened, but I need to watch this week's Survivor. I'm a Survivor. I'm not a huge fan of reality TV overall, but every reality TV show where somebody is eliminated, I like that. I like a real
A mean streak in you. I love it.
I'll keep mine short. I think the thing, when I think about all of like how we connect folks is really about access, right? And I see so many people of color in this room, and I think I spoke about it earlier when I originally had the mic, is that, even thinking about my Young Involved Philadelphia lens, we've been around in this city for 25 years, giving young people access to government, access to safe spaces, and access to the folks who really make decisions in the city of Philadelphia. So like that's the thing that I really like to try to do. And this year under my leadership, with YIP, I've taken YIP to a national stage and a global stage, always making sure that we have that access, whether it's Philadelphia, whether it's Ghana, whether it's Miami, whether it's California. Like we have been and we're going all around the country, really making sure that young people have that space and place to do the same things I get to love and do every day, which also leads to my joy, which is seeing other folks, who don't really always care about government and spaces and feel like their city forgot about them and re-engaging them. So that's something that I enjoy doing.
Let's see. So I think that for the co-conspirator question, something that I hear a lot, just walking in the streets, that I always is really curious to me is I overhear people saying this doesn't make sense, whatever it may be, bus running late, pothole putting a flat in your car tire, schools closing, you name it. This doesn't make sense. And so, as the doctor on the panel, I've devoted myself to try to make things make sense. When I was at the U.S. Treasury Department, I was charged with the implementation of the Inflation Reduction Act, which was the single largest investment in this country's history to transition the country away from fossil fuels towards renewable energy sources. And in order to do that, we needed to have a disbursement mechanism. That mechanism is an agency called the IRS. It's the most hated agency in federal government. And it happens to kind of permeate the souls of the people who work there too. And it's a largely toxic place, unfortunately. And one of the things that I did in my job there was to, as I was overseeing the IRS modernization efforts, to be able to disperse that money. And I helped bring over $600 million to the greater Philadelphia region through IRA funding, was to help the IRS understand itself more as a benefits provider than just as a punitive tax collector. And that clicked with certain people. And so we started with this program. It was a pilot program. You may have heard of it. We just got out of tax season. It was the direct file program where people could file their taxes directly with the IRS without any upcharges, and you would get your refund, and it was easy. And it was really, really successful. And we also were able to make the call wait time go down from 3 hours to 3 minutes.
God bless you.
3.
There's that 3 again.
And sadly, that's all been undone by this administration, but we showed that you can do that. And so now there's a model that we can build off of, because the Inflation Reduction Act wasn't perfect, but it's a great starting place. And so now we have a model, and I've got my co-conspirators in line that say, yeah, the IRS did suck. It sucks again, but maybe it can be better, because actually they can provide a benefit to people. So, and then what brings me joy? I mean, right now it's Ivana Elena. Apart from that, I run. I ran 7 miles this morning. I run 5 miles.
Was someone chasing you?
Just time.
Speaking for the non-runners in the room.
And I dance. I like dancing. I'm a former b-boy, and I love dancing salsa and merengue with my wife. So those things bring me joy.
Well, I had a story about salsa dancing with my husband that I'll share with you later. It was not good.
Thank you. So for me, active allyship, I think of my role with Alpha Philadelphia as chapter president. So we're the Association of Latino Professionals. And I think about lifting as I climb. And with our organization, we start supporting students at the student level and then throughout their professional career. So I have a board member here. Hi, Christine, that she came along. So she's a recent graduate from Drexel who just landed her first job. So
Congratulations.
So really thinking about, what doors you're opening, what introductions are you making to people, and then just, again, sometimes you need that mentor, sometimes you need that friend to walk you through that. And I think that's what active allyship means, that you are looking at the room and that you're saying, hey, this person should come next, right? This person should be in the room, and really being thoughtful about that. And what brings me joy, I would definitely say, you mentioned like every day, maybe every week. I would say on a daily basis, I call Martin. and I vent to Martin. But aside from that, I do get to spend a lot of time with my nieces and nephews. They bring so much joy to me. I'm the cool tia. So yeah, that definitely brings me joy, family, and yeah, I'm just grateful to have a great support system.
Wonderful, thank you.
This is a good question. For me, we all said access, right? But I think about equitable access. Not everyone has the same opportunity. And something that I am not okay with is how we've normalized the survival mentality and scarcity. I've been in survival mindset. I've had scarcity and limited resources, and I was not okay with that. So why is it that once we remove ourselves from that norm, that we're not disrupting that anymore? So being the ED at the Sustainable Business Network, our mission is to create a just, free, and thriving economy. We're thinking about what it means to be a sustainable ecosystem, a sustainable human being, your wellness and well-being, a sustainable business, not just prospering the first year. How do you make it past the 5 years? And working along with chambers like IB and ZAC, and thinking about what it means to think beyond, I want my business to just be able to last. I want my business to grow. I want to create impact. And then if you're in the environment part of it, which is triple bottom line, people, planet, and prosperity, we can have great businesses, great people. We're no longer surviving. But if our planet's not thriving, there's nothing for us to look forward to and live for. So I lead with truly challenging survival. And that means checking in with how people are surviving, whether that's their identity or access to resources. If you're not okay with them struggling, then do something about it. Show up, talk about it in a room. Make people uncomfortable. For me, I believe in disruption. I'm gonna make people uncomfortable because people have no problem making me feel uncomfortable. So why is that not something you feel uncomfortable, make people uncomfortable, and bring other people with you? I think everyone in this space is a disruptor. I believe in that. Find what you're good at disrupting and show up. Brings me joy. My fiance, aka wife, Liana, we've been together for 11 years. That's my lifeline, my rock. Running, my jogs, and truly recently, I say this often, but I've received so much joy by bumping into like-minded people in rooms. When you don't feel like you belong in a room and you see someone like Vanessa's like, oh, Vanessa's here, Martine's here. Okay, there's community, but it's powerful to see that there's good people in rooms, and then it's more powerful when we're in rooms like this. We're like, oh, these are people that actually care about creating change. And something about that brings me genuine joy and hope. So I hope you feel hope and inspired and find joy in the people here today.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I agree with that. I'm a huge believer in the energy and the vibes that people carry, and you can tell. And you know, when you're in a room and you meet someone and you can sense, okay, we're gonna be close. This is somebody that I can talk to. I don't have to, put on my, my white American Raquel. I can be me and share and be, authentic. I think that's a powerful skill to have, to be able to identify, your allies, your personal allies. And so that's another wonderful message to leave everyone in. All right, panel. All right, everyone. Tonight you heard from six people who didn't wait for permission. They didn't wait for a door to open. They didn't wait for the table to have room. They didn't wait for the system to catch up to the urgency that they felt. They built, they organized, they showed up again and again for communities that the institutions around them were still learning how to see. Every single one of them started somewhere: a row home in South Philly, a classroom in North Philly, a campaign office in Texas, a recruitment station, a scholarship application, a mayor's office internship at 14. None of them had every door open, Most of them had doors closed in their face. And every single one of them found a way through grit, through vision, through people who believed in them before it was obvious to be in this room tonight. What you witnessed here is not exceptional. It is what Philadelphia looks like when we actually invest in our own people, when we open the door, when we pull up the chair, when we say out loud that the next leaders of this city are already here. So go home tonight and think about that one person in your life who is doing the work, who has the vision, who just needs someone to say, I see you. I'll open this door. I'll put your name in the room. Be that person. That is how Philadelphia becomes what it's capable of being. Thank you.
I guess I will close us out. Well, I just want to say thank you all. This was such a wonderful conversation. You know, this is 5 of the 10 members of the first season, and you know that's a lot of pressure because imagine the second season and beyond. And you guys are brilliant, and thank you so much for everything that you do to uplift all of us. Raquel, thank you so much, and this was wonderful. Maria, Mar, you guys are doing the work. Jesus, thank you so much for all the video work. Maria, for all the editing. Cutting out all the ums and the silence and, all the things. Maria, thank you so much for doing all this. And we're here for another 15 minutes or so. So make sure you guys connect with somebody that you haven't met before. Eat a lot of food. There's a lot of food.
Good
Drink
food.
and have a great night. This is Next in Philly.